Good afternoon. This is Anne Marie, and I'm here to give you a little bit of a grammar lesson this week. We're going to start with the simple present and present continuous verb tenses. This is a video that is aimed towards my intermediate and my higher intermediate classes, as I am going to be going over more of the why we choose between the two rather than the actual conjugation of the verbs. Now, when I say conjugation, what I'm really talking about is how we change the spelling or the pronunciation of the verbs based on the verb tense. That's our conjugation. Now, for those rules, I have a ton of links that I can send you. They're very easy to find. But what we're going to discuss today is why we choose between the simple present and the present continuous. For some of my clients, this is going to be a review class, and for others, this is going to be an introducing you to the verb tenses. Great. So let's get started. So for anyone who's seen me before in a classroom, you know that I love my timeline. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw what I call a timeline, and this just gives us a sense of how to visualize the verb tenses a little bit. So we just have kind of a sense of what we're talking about. So when we talk about a timeline, we are talking about our past. This is our line of speaking or our present moment, and this is our future, okay? So when we talk about the verb tenses in English, they are a little bit different than we use them in French. In French, it is more about where you are on the timeline. That's kind of what you're communicating when you choose your verb tense. In English, it can be a little bit different because it is where we are on the timeline, but it's also an implication or something about the message itself. And it's a running joke that in French you can go, can have something that's a paragraph long, and in English it's going to be 2 sentences. And part of the reason for that is because of our verb tenses and how we use them and how we treat them. And so this is okay when you're just learning English and you're just treating it as where you are on the verb tense on the timeline. But as you become more advanced, you're going to be expected to be able not only to understand these kind of subtle inferences about the message, but you're going to be expected that how you give your message is in line with those expectations as well. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to start with our simple present and our present continuous. Okay? So on this timeline, where we would find the simple present is, of course, all across our timeline. Now we have 3 distinct kind of situations where we use the simple present. We have facts, opinions, and habits. Now, when we talk about these 3 situations, we're talking about a situation that is more general and permanent. Okay, that is our perspective on the situation. Now, when we say that, when we talk about a habit, so that's something that kind of repeats over time. So when we talk about a habit, we're really talking about something like, I go to the gym 3 times a week. So if I tell you I go to the gym 3 times a week, does that mean I'm at the gym when I say that? No, not necessarily. I could be, but not necessarily. And also, when I say I go to the gym 3 times a week, you heard me say a couple minutes ago that it was permanent and general. Does that mean I will always go to the gym 3 times a week? No. Absolutely. History has shown that that is not the case. So when we look at that, what we want to get across is the idea that at the moment of speaking, we believe it to always be true. So we believe it to be permanent in general at the moment of speaking. That same goes for our opinions and our facts. And what is a fact? A fact is something that is verifiable or that everybody can generally agree is true. Now, I know in the age of flat earthers and whatnot, this is difficult to get a hold of, but just something that people can generally agree is true. When we're talking about opinion, we are talking about things like I think, I believe, I like, I love, I hate. things of that nature. So things that express our preferences. So again, when we use that simple present, we're really using it to express something that is all over the timeline. That is as true yesterday as it is today, as it will be tomorrow. And when we use that verb tense, we're really communicating that general, I don't see an end to this activity. And this directly contrasts with how we treat the present continuous. When we look at the present continuous, it's always something that has started in our past, goes through our moment of speaking, and ends in the future. The big difference between these two is that whereas the simple present doesn't have a beginning and end, it's forever, the present continuous has a definable beginning and end. Now, the present continuous, the I am doing something, well, that can be something that you're actually in the middle of, like a continuous activity, or it can be something that you pick up and put down many times before you finish, like a project, a book, or knitting a sweater. I'm sure everybody's developed a hobby in the past 6 or 7 weeks, so I imagine that you can think of a project that you're doing that has a definitive beginning and end to it. And this is really what you're communicating. Okay, that this is temporary and specific in the present continuous, where it is general and permanent in the simple present. Okay? Now, when we move between those two, when we're expressing ourselves, we're also communicating how we see the situation as well. So this can go for, say, for example, if I say something like, on March 15th, I said something like, I'm walking 5 kilometers every day. Why would I choose the present continuous for something that I say, I'm walking 5 kilometers every day? I would use the present continuous because even though I'm using every day, which is an adverb, which indicates kind of a habit, I'm using the present continuous if I'd been speaking on March 15th because it was a new habit, something that I had just developed out of boredom, right? But if you ask me today, I would say I walk for 5 kilometers every day. So now I've switched to the simple present because it's an established habit. So sometimes we distinguish between an established habit in the simple present with a new habit by switching to the present continuous but keeping our adverb that indicates habit. We can also change our tone when we speak by switching between the two. Like, for example, I could say, my husband always leaves his boots in the front hallway. Now, if I said that using our simple present, well, it's normal. It's no judgment. There's no tone. There's no frustration. The present continuous and keep my adverb always or never. My husband is always leaving his boots in the front hallway. He hates it when I use him as an example. Then you can hear that there's a shift in my tone. There, you know that I am frustrated, I'm annoyed. I think it happens more than is normal. Okay, so that's something you really need to be aware of when you're switching between the simple present and the present continuous. Okay, when we're using the simple present, remember the perspective is general and permanent. Mary manages that location. You work for that company. However, I would say I'm working for that company because I'm on contract. It's not permanent. It's temporary. It has a specific beginning and end. If I say Mary is managing that department, well, now I've indicated to you something about Mary's position. Either she's replacing somebody, so it's only temporary, or maybe I don't think she's a good fit, so I'm looking to replace her, but I'm communicating something about the situation itself besides just where it is on the timeline. So there you go. When you go between the simple present and the present continuous, you're going to communicate a lot more than just where you are on the timeline. And you have to be really careful, because if you write a client and you say something like, I am never finding your work, I'm never finding your emails. Well, it sounds like you're super annoyed. It sounds like you're frustrated, that you have a lot of kind of issues with it. So you want to avoid inserting tone in situations where there isn't any. Now, also, you have to be careful. It can be helpful, though, because it can help you insert tone and help communicate some frustration without being very explicit. So you can also say something like, I am never finding your emails, kind of going like, look, I've told you to use that subject line a couple times and you're just not doing it. So you want to be careful. You want to use the tone when it is appropriate. Okay, so if you have any questions, just leave them in the comments. Remember, you're going to read this. You're going to watch this, and then I'm going to attach some examples below this video where you're going to see both a simple present and a present continuous version of sentences. And both are valid to the situation, but they deliver a different context, meaning that if you're going to see something like Mary manages that location, and we're going to say, well, the context is that she's the manager. That's her job. It's permanent. We don't expect it to change. When we say Mary is managing that location, well, we're going to say, well, she's temporary. And I can tell right now that she's either filling in for somebody, or we're going to replace her, or, maybe it's a new position and she's just adjusting to it, but there's something different. So that's the key point. You want to kind of be able to pick out from the use of the verb tenses when something is slightly different from normal. So normal protocols would be in our simple present. Abnormal would be in our present continuous. So I'm going to attach that list of sentences below this video. Take a look and we'll discuss them in class. Bye.